Uh, Today, we're going to talk about backing. And this year, Mike included turning and parking. And we're not talking about parking in the shop back here at the end of the day. That's a small part of it. We're talking about parking in parking lots, parking along the edge of the road, setting up for your job sites, parking our vehicles on the job site so they're out of the way, you know, things like that. Okay. And it does get a little bit redundant because a lot of the same hazards with backing also come into play with turning and parking. So it does get a little bit redundant with some of this stuff, but it's worth talking about and worth reminding y'all, what we need to be aware of. And this month, Mike has asked us to take any input from y'all. So either during or at the end of it, if you guys have backed into something a little bit strange that you wouldn't think of, let me know. Or if you got a technique that you use out in the field over your career that you found that works for you to avoid backing accidents, share those with us, because we go to a lot of different places and we need to share those things around the state for the good of the whole group. Okay, so feel free to be interactive if you want to. The reason we bring one of these programs around every couple years, and we do, is because of that. It's expensive, y'all. In a little over a year, this is just co-ops that are insured by Federated. Almost $1 million paid out for backing accidents. Why do we got to keep reminding ourselves of it? It's expensive, y'all. It's expensive. Y'all are fortunate here. You're a big place. If you need a tool, you can get a tool. But I promise you, some of these smaller places, if they have a lot of backing accidents and they're paying out for backing accidents, and those guys go and to their OS and they say, man, I've seen this new tool. Man, that sure make our work a lot easier. Can we get it? Well, we'll try to budget it next year. That's reality. Y'all are lucky here. You need something, probably you get it if it's going to help you work safer or better. Okay. It's not like that everywhere. And it's because of stuff like this. So if you add in all the co-ops that are not insured by Federated, and you add in all of the municipals, and then you add in all the backing accidents that aren't reported to OSHA or to Federated, I can't imagine what that number would be. Because a lot of times a backing accident isn't real bad. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. We just pay them out of pocket rather than trying to run rates up for insurance. And that happens a lot. So if you add all that in, ain't no telling what that number is. So it's a big deal. Please take this serious today for a lot of reasons. Okay. All right. So what are some of the hazards that we incur out there? Backing into stationary objects. That's a biggie. And I'm going to share with you guys some of the things that have been told to me this week from guys like y'all that might be a little bit unusual or something that you wouldn't think about. One of the early meetings this month guy says, yeah, he says, I backed over a propane tank. How's that happen? Great big propane tank. How do you back over there? It happens, y'all. It happens because we don't follow through with some of the things that we need to follow through with. Had another one on this one, and it deals more with turning rather than backing. Had a guy tell me that they were rebuilding a line of poles on a pretty narrow road out in the middle of nowhere. And he needed to turn around, had a load of poles behind him, and he was out there rolling poles off, and he needed to turn around. Here's a lane that goes up and goes around this real old hay barn. And he thought, well, I'll just go in there, go around that barn, come back out, go the other direction. I don't have to back up. I don't have to worry about anything. So he goes in this lane. He goes up there and he goes around this barn. He gets around that last corner, and all of a sudden in the tall grass, he sees a water spigot sticking up. Something that he wasn't expecting. So not thinking, he turned sharper than what he normally would have. The trailer caught the corner of the barn, and the barn fell down around it. Now, I don't know about y'all, but if I had to walk in John's office and say, you ain't going to believe this, I tore a building down That'd be a tough one. You know, that'd be a tough one. Probably be one that you guys wouldn't live down for a long time. But again, he wasn't expecting that water spigot to be there, so he adjusted without thinking. Okay, and cut it shorter, and that turning radius obviously caught the edge of the barn. Striking other vehicles, this is where it gets expensive, because now you got to pay for fixing your vehicle as well as the one you hit, whether it's another company vehicle or whether it's, you know, one of your members or whatever. Striking pedestrians, already got a story about this one. I actually have two stories. The second one I'll tell you a little bit later in the presentation. But the very first meeting I did this month, guy raised his hand when I got to this point, and he says, "Yeah, I backed into a homeowner." I says, "Really?" I says, "Guy all right?" And he says, "Yeah, he's all right. Just knocked him down. He wasn't, you know, wasn't watching me, and backed into him, knocked him down." He said, "I didn't know it." He says, "I backed up, turned around his driveway and left." He got back to the building, and his OS met him at the door, and he says, "Do you know you backed into John Doe?" He goes, "What do you mean I backed into him?" He said, "Well, when you were turning around in his driveway, you hit him and knocked him down." He's like, "God, is he okay?" He says, "Yeah, he's fine. He's okay." But he called in. He just wanted to make you aware to take some precautions so this doesn't happen in the future. So he got lucky there with that one, okay? But it does happen. He was standing out there talking to him. They got done talking. He got in his truck, did his paperwork, checked his mirrors, didn't see anything back there, and backed up without getting out and walking around, okay? So there's ways we can prevent some of these things. And then this one, got a story on this one too, one that probably a lot of us have either had or been a part of or heard of. Maybe not backing over an elevation or backing into a depression. This story was, I was backing across and this was the same meeting that the guy backed into a pedestrian or to a homeowner. He was backing across the yard to change transformer out. And he went across the yard and didn't take the time to, "Hey, Mr. Member, I got to get to that transformer pole over there, change that transformer out. I got to go across your yard. Is there anything that I'm going to run over, like a septic?" Backed over a septic, caved a septic tank in. It's probably happened here, huh, John? Happened at our co-op. It happened at our co-op, y'all. It happens, man. You guys need, number one, you're expected to be professional. Number two, you're expected to be courteous. Even if that septic is clear on the other side of the house, a knock on the door to let that member know, "I got to back across your yard," is going to mean a lot to them. Okay. Number one, you can say, "I might leave some ruts if they're really bad, you know, I'll let the office know, and we'll probably try to come out and fix them," or whatever your policy is here. "And I'm worried about where your septic is." You know, it's going to mean an awful lot to them. So take the time, be courteous, find out where you're backing and know what you're backing over. Okay. Some of the common ones, mailboxes, I can raise my hand on that one too. Mailboxes are probably one of the biggest things that normally are issues with backing over, and most of us have either done it or been involved with something like that. We had a guy, he was my best friend back where I worked, loaded a load of poles on the pole trailer, forgot his lunch bucket in the warehouse. We used to carry our lunch back then. So he got them poles loaded. He comes up, makes a big circle in the parking lot and starts backing up to go up and get his, either forgot the poles were on or didn't realize how close to the building he was, backed right through his own door on his own bay after he just came out of there. So these type of things can happen, you know, so it can get expensive on things like that. This one's real common, and it's what I mentioned before. You know, when you're out the job site, there's multiple vehicles out there. Most of them are actually being used in part of the setup, but some of them aren't. So when you do your job briefing out there, discuss that. You've got a check mark that you've got to check on there about setup, how you're going to set up. Discuss it. Okay, we're not going to use this bucket truck, so Why don't you park it over there, out the way, you know, park, get it where it's not going to be a problem. So that one's a big one, and you can kind of understand why sometimes we have multiple vehicles out there working in a small area. But there's ways, again, that we can help prevent that. Public property or public vehicles or equipment. Had a story on this one. By the end of the month, these meetings are going to take 2 hours. Had a crew out installing underground in a brand new subdivision, going around setting transformers and making up elbows. End of the day, made the elbows up, put them on the transformer, closed it up, locked it up, and backed over the transformer they just worked on. How's that happen? Because we get complacent, y'all, and we're not doing the things that we need to do on a regular basis to prevent some of those things. So, I mean, all of those things happen on a regular basis. We've got to cut down on the ones that are preventable, okay? All right, so what causes backing accidents and things like that? This is a big one. You guys have so many blind spots in those trucks that y'all drive. They've gotten so big. You don't have a mirror to look straight out the back. You've got side mirrors. You can't turn around and look straight out the back because you got wire hanging there. You've got a turret there with a boom on it. Anymore, we can't even look back like this or like this because the boxes are built up so high on our bins to carry cover up and ladders and sticks and all those things. We got so many blind spots. We're up against it, guys. We really are. We're up against it. We can't see out of these trucks, and they're so big. And so we've got to make sure we're diligent doing some of these things we're going to talk about. Damaged or out of adjustment mirrors. If you're backing in someplace and limb catches that mirror, stop right then, pull it back in so you can see. Don't just keep backing using the other mirror. You know, that might catch some stuff, but it might not. So make sure you stop and adjust those. Weather conditions affect us all the time in everything that we do. Bad lighting or at nighttime. One of the tips that we're putting out there at nighttime, if you, and a lot of this program is if you're by yourself, okay? The majority of this program is if you're by yourself and have to back up. If you're out there at nighttime, and I don't care if you're in a pickup or a foreman's truck, this doesn't have to just be your bigger trucks. If you've got to back up at nighttime to turn around someplace, take a light and walk it out. If you're backing into tall grass, man, walk it out. Make sure there ain't a stump or something in there you're going to hit, or a hole or a rock. Okay? And then once you've made a clear path where you think you want to back, take that hand light and stick it so it's pointing up. It gives you something to aim at. Otherwise, you get in your truck after walking that out, you may back into the place you just made sure was clear. You may miss it by 10 feet and hit a stump. Put something back there what you can see, give you something to aim at, right? And that way you know you're backing in the spot that you know is clear. Again, other pedestrians and blind spots that you normally have, make sure you account for those. And this one here, this one and the top one, I think are probably the two most common causes of backing accidents, just simply not doing what I just said. Oh, it's a grassy field. I can back anywhere I want in there. Well, there's stumps all over that you can't see, you know, or whatever the case may be. Take the time, and that's at nighttime or during the day. Take the time to know where you need to back and make sure the path is clear, okay? Those are important things, you know, they're important things that cause these accidents. So what do we do to stop it? That one seems like a no-brainer, right? Let's just don't back up. And it sounds, you know, we kind of laugh at that because we can't always do it. But when we pull up to a job site and we're talking about backing up and we're talking about setup, discuss it, y'all. You know, if somebody says, well, I'll pull in here and you back up to me, take a look at it and say, well, you know, I think I'll go down, turn around and come in this way. And I'm going to limit my backing. I only have to back up 5 feet that way. Can I come in from this way and just drive in and drive out? How can we set up to where we don't have to back? Because there's ways of doing it, Joe. And a lot of times it just takes a little bit of discussion. You know, talk about those things that we can do So we don't have to back up. And I get it. You can't always do that. But if you can, it's obviously a win. Okay. It's a win. If you're alone, we have to do these things that we talked about. We've got to walk it out. We might have to walk it out multiple times. If you got to back up a long lane, you may have to stop and walk the next section out, stop and walk the next section out, but it's worth doing rather than backing into something that you can't see. So we've got to make sure that those areas are clear and established, okay? One of the things that has come up is backup cameras. How many of y'all in here on big trucks have a backup camera? So several of you. Y'all like them? Y'all like them? I've heard both on this, guys. I've heard they ain't worth a damn, and I've heard, yeah, I like it. Here's the thing, whether you like it and use it a lot, or if you just use it occasionally, it can help you, okay? I've got them on my personal trucks. I've got them on my work pickup out here. I'm not one of those because I'm old school. I grew up my whole life using my side mirrors, okay? But with that backup camera, once I put it in reverse, I do look, even though I may have just walked behind the truck, I do look to make sure nothing's back there. Then I'll go to my mirrors and I'll check it often, because I'm not one, even though my kids laugh at me, even though, you know, it shows you the radius that you're going to go to back into a parking spot, for instance. It's right here. I'm not confident enough to do it, so I use my side mirrors, but at least use them to check what's back there, okay? Because they will show you that. The other backing accident that I was going to tell you about, I'll tell you now. And this happened several years ago, actually, before I even started this job. And it was down in Florida. They had a service truck pull into a driveway at their member's house. Got out and did whatever he was there for. I don't know what he was there for. It doesn't matter. Got back in the truck, filled out his paperwork, checked his mirrors, started backing up to turn around. He heard something. So he stopped, put it in park, and set his parking brake, and he got out and he walked back behind his truck, and he just run over a little kid on one of those big wheels, so 3-wheel big wheel things. Killed him. Killed that kid. So is this stuff serious? Y'all, it can be real serious. It can be real serious. I'd have a hard time living with myself if that was me in that truck. If he had a camera, which back then didn't, might have helped. But y'all do something here, and I'll just tell you, I've been using Middle Tennessee all month as an example. And it's a pat on y'all's back. And Donnie and I have talked about it. Y'all put a policy in place a little while back that you have to do a circle of safety if you're by yourself. Maybe even if you're not by yourself, I don't know what your policy is, but you're required to do a circle of safety and walk around your truck before you back up. Since you guys had this policy put in place, you know how many accidents you've had this year? Backing accidents? The last I knew, it was 0. So it's either 0 or really close to 0 backing accidents. You think this stuff don't work? It works, guys. It works. There's some things you got to remember. Like, you got to remember, you want to do that circle of safety right before you back up, not right before you get in the truck and do 3 or 4 or 5 minutes of paperwork. Do your paperwork, get out the truck, do your circle of safety, make sure something hadn't come up behind you, and then back up slowly and safely. Okay? It works because you're at 0 or real close. I haven't followed the last month or so, but 0 or close. Guys, you have no idea how that blows my mind. Blows my mind, because I cannot go around any month, and when I ask for accidents, close calls, or near misses, I cannot go around a month without at least a couple utilities saying, yeah, we had a backing accident. And that's just facts, guys. What you're doing is working, and it's a pat on your back, man. Keep doing it, but do it right before you back up. Because if there's kids around, if there's little kids around, and somebody mentioned Halloween coming up, if there's little kids around, these little kids think the trucks that y'all drive are cool. And man, if it's sitting there for any length of time and they're around it, they're going to get close to it to see it, man, because that's a cool truck. And they'll even watch you work. What we do for a living is intriguing to little kids. So we have to take the time to do these things, guys, because we can't have another one of those. That's just an awful, awful tragedy, and I can't imagine living with that one. Use the cameras if you've got them, at least checking periodically, and do your circle of safety. You know, I don't give AT&T a lot of credit for working safe just because of the things that I've seen. But multiple years ago, they put a policy in place that if they stop their vehicle, they've got to put a cone in the front and in the back of that vehicle. And this is the reasons we're talking about. It forces them, before they back up, to walk around that truck, pick them cones up. I think that's a great idea. Setting cones out it's nothing. It takes no time. So setting a cone at the front and in the back, I think it's a good idea. You know, I ain't trying to tell you all what to do here. As long as you're doing your circle of safety and you're doing it diligently, stick with what you're doing, okay? But we've got to do that. Don't be afraid to do this one. The guy that backed into the homeowner, he's sitting at the back, or standing at the back of the truck talking to him. He got done talking and he was going to get in his truck. He assumed that guy went in the house. He could have made a simple comment to the guy. Hey man, I got to back up in your driveway, turn around here. Will you mind spotting me? That's going to go a long way. Your popularity with that dude just went out the roof. He's going to look at you and think, man, this guy really cares, you know? And he's probably going to say, yeah, I'll stand back here and watch you. Yeah, you're going to earn respect by doing something simple like that, something very, very simple like that. So don't be afraid to do that one either, okay? If you're not alone, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because I'm just going to be honest with you. If you're not alone, meaning more than one of you is present, backing accidents are either 100% preventable or darn close to it. Because if there's somebody spotting you and you still back into something, that's on you. Okay? But here's the deal. You're required to do that. If there's more than one person present, and even backing out of your stalls back here, if there's more than one person present, you're required to have a spotter. And you guys need to do it. Okay? Because if you don't, I don't know what your policy is here, so I'm not going to get into it. But if you don't have a spotter back there and you back into something, you should go home for 3 days. That's just how I feel about it. I don't know what your policy is here, and I hope I'm not getting you guys in trouble, but you shouldn't be getting in trouble because you got to have a spotter. Just please do it. Please do it. And here's the other thing about a spotter. We not only got to look at the path we're backing up, we got to look vertical. So we don't back up into a tree limb hanging out and stick it right through the middle of our bucket. And as silly as it sounds, it's not a bad idea to have a spotter in front of you at times. If you're in a cluttered area and you're driving into a tight area with trees and stuff, and you got a pin-on bucket on your digger truck, those have been torn off a lot, simply by the guys watching where he's going and not watching where the limb is to hit that bucket. Don't be afraid to have somebody stand in front and in back if you need it, okay? But guys, you're required to have a spotter. If there's 2 of you out there and there's 2 vehicles out there and both vehicles need to be backed up, do them one at a time, back them up to where this guy's ready to drive out, and then have him spot you till you're ready to drive out. It's what's required of it, okay? It is. So please follow through with that one. It should be 0 or darn close to 0 accidents if there's more than one person there. Make sure all your strobes and flashers and warning devices are working out in the field. If you're moving at all at the job site, all of those things should be on. Make sure that this one right here, audible, is working every morning when you do your walk around. You do your truck inspections. One of them should be, put it in reverse with your foot on the brake and see if you hear that beeper beeping, right? So make sure that you check that every single morning, just like you do brake lights and your turn lights and your flashers and your strobes and all that stuff. Make sure you check that backup beeper, because that's a big deal when it comes to letting people know what you're doing, the people around you, okay? And then whenever you're hauling things like poles and some of the trailers that you guys pull, allow for that extended reach of those. And a lot of times, if you've got long poles on the back of a pole trailer, it's hard to see way back there, especially when you're trying to navigate a turn backing up. So take the time to put a spotter back there and allow for that type of stuff. One thing that I'm going to mention, I know you guys wouldn't do it here, but yesterday we're doing URD school over at TCAT this week, and we got talking between speakers with some of the guys and talking about this very thing. He goes, I was going down the road the other day, and he passed another utility truck carrying a pole on the pole rack of the truck. He said, I'm not sure how long that pole was, but it was this high off the ground, and it was at least 20 feet in front of that truck. No, don't put big poles like that on your trucks. They need to be on a trailer. Okay? If you're putting an 80-foot pole on the side of your truck, you need to think about that one. Okay? Much safer to put it on a trailer. Okay? Too many things can happen. And people do things like that. That's why we talk about them. Okay? All right, so that we're going to get out of the backing stuff, and we're going to start into the turning hazards. Y'all are up against it here as well, just simply because of the size of the trucks that you drive. When it comes to making some of the turns off of narrow roads onto another narrow road with ditches on both sides, when it comes to turning into some of your tight lanes off of a small road, we got to think about that, because we may have to navigate that turn in more than one turn. We may have to do a 2 or 3 point turn going forwards, just because of some of the sizes of your trucks and the lengths of them and the narrow areas that we've got to navigate them in. And the other part of this one is, if you're on one of those roads that aren't real wide and your truck's taking up every bit of your half and your mirrors are sticking out a little bit past your half, and there's an oncoming vehicle coming, you're expected to slow down and get over for that vehicle if you got to get over for them. Okay? Your company expects you to be professional and courteous. And if you hold your lane, even though you're taking up your half, but some little old lady or man is coming at you. You see how I covered myself with that one? I saw you saying it. I'm not going to say little old lady. A little old lady or man is coming at you, and they panic because they realize that road's narrow and you've got the entire half of yours, and they get run into ditch. Guess what's going to happen? John, one of your trucks ran me off the road today. And it's going to be on you, y'all. It is. It's going to be on you. They're going to say that you had to get over because the mirrors were sticking out or whatever the case may be, and they went into the ditch. And it's going to be your fault. So consider that, be the courteous one, do the right thing, and make room for them. Tight turns at intersections, driveways, parking lots, all of those type of things. This is one of the big things, especially if you're hitting mailboxes and things like that, or turning in with trailers and they don't follow right behind you. The mailbox incident that we talked about earlier, that's one of the times they get hit, because we just don't have the room to make these turns, and we might think we do, but unless we're sure of what that path is going to be, we can strike something like that. So again, make sure you know that you've got enough room. Turning across oncoming traffic, make sure that you've got plenty of time. If with these big trucks and how long it takes them to get going, if there's a car coming, don't go if it's, I think I can make it. Make sure you can make it to where he doesn't have to slow down. Okay? Make sure that you've got plenty of time when pulling out with oncoming traffic, because it does take our trucks a little bit longer to get going and a little bit longer to clear that intersection. So, just err on the side of giving them the benefit and wave them on through, or whatever the case might be. Okay. When traveling with a trailer, we talked about that extended swing radius. And again, you're up against it. One of the guys earlier in the month, when we were talking about this one here, he raised his hand and he says, you know, one of the things that I do, and he says, we oftentimes take out multiple or poles for multiple jobs on a trailer. And he says, what I commonly do in those cases, even if he's got the room to work, he'll find an open parking lot or an open area, get off that trailer and load just the poles he needs on his pole rack for that job. That way he's not making these wide turns with a trailer or having to back with a trailer. Now, that's a great tip. You know, that's one of those tips that we'd like to have come in from y'all, because that's a great idea. You know, obviously, if you're going to use all of them, you can't do that, or you have to make multiple trips, and it might even be worth that. You know, so take those things into consideration. And if you can eliminate one of those hazards, that's what we do for a living. We engineer out hazards. That's why we use cover up. That's why we wear gloves and sleeves and hard hats and eye protection. We're engineering out as much of the hazard as we can. If loading a pole or two on the side of your truck and leaving the trailer in a parking lot engineers out one of those hazards, I think that's a good idea. I think it's a great idea. So think about those type of things as well. If you're changing lanes, don't do what the truckers do and turn your turn light on as you're coming out into another lane. Be courteous, signal your intention a long time in advance, and give people around you time to understand what your intention is. Whether it's pulling out into a right lane or back into a left lane, or pulling out into a lane to make a right-hand turn, you know, because sometimes we've got to do that as well. So signal your intention. This was commonplace at the utility at the co-op that I came from. If we were pulling a pole trailer with poles, it was never the last one in line going out to the job site. We always had someone follow it, whether it was the bucket truck, whether it was a foreman's truck. Somebody always followed a truck pulling pole trailer. I mean, it was commonplace for us. We didn't necessarily have a policy for it, but it was commonplace for us. If we're pulling poles, somebody's to follow it. Even with the flags and lights and all that stuff on them, we had somebody follow them. You know, if you're taking a pole somewhere, there's more than one truck going, you know, so have somebody follow them. I think that's just it's a great tip and something to think about. Okay. All right. So again, what can we do to make safe turns? Again, it's a little bit repetitious. Know the path that you're going to take. Know how much road you're going to take up to make that turn. Are you pulling poles, you know, that's going to swing out into another lane of traffic? Or have you got a big truck pulling into a narrow driveway? Are you able to navigate that in one turn? Or do you got to make multiple stops, make a multiple point turn going forwards? Know where you're going and plan it out. Plan it out. Signal your intention clearly and far enough in advance so everybody around you knows what to expect, that they know your intention, so that when you pull out into that other lane to make a right-hand turn, they don't come up beside you and you turn right into them. Double check your path before you do it and make sure that you get a spotter. The guy sitting next to you in the truck, it used to be commonplace. We pulled up to an intersection. Driver would look around both ways, but the guy sitting next to us would say, yep, it's clear, come on out. My guess is a lot of times now the guy's over there doing this. Put the phones away and ride line and help the guy driving. Help him navigate these turns, okay? Make sure you look for him because of all the blind spots that we have. And then once you make your turn, do it smoothly and fully, and don't take any more time than necessary, but do it safely, okay? Okay, parking. A lot of the same things that we just went through with backing and turning fall into place with parking. And that's whether we're parking at the end of the day back here in the warehouse. It's whether we're in a parking lot to go in and have lunch, or we're in a parking lot to go into the hardware store and pick up something that we need for the day's job or whatever. There's a lot of different scenarios that come with parking that we got to consider. Avoid backing if possible, just like we said before. If you're in a parking lot and you can pull straight through, so you don't have to back up at all. Pull straight through, you know? And then that way, when you get back in your vehicle, you drive out much safer, so you don't have to back out, okay? If you can't pull straight through, statistically, it's safer to back in rather than backing out, because when you're coming in a parking lot, you can see everything around you. You're aware of your surroundings. You stop, check your mirrors, and you come back in. It's safer. When you're backing out, you've got cars parked beside you. You've got other cars backing out that you may not be able to see. So statistically, it is safer to back into a parking spot as opposed to backing out, okay? Especially if you've got a spotter. And this one here, here's one of these dumb moments. When we get sent these programs, or when we build these programs, depends who's building it. Sometimes you scratch your head and you just think, you dummy. And this was one of them for me this month. I was going through this program, getting everything in order to do it this month, and I came to that. I'll be honest with you, I was sitting there at my table looking at it, and I just stopped and I shook my head. Every one of us do this. And you know how ignorant this is? We'll go into Lowe's and we'll drive around and we'll see a guy fixing to pull out. We'll take the time to drive all the way back around, so that we can park 15 feet closer than this one we could have had right when we pulled in, and we could have pulled straight through. Are we really that lazy, y'all, that we can't walk an extra 15 feet? Think about it. Park further away where you can pull straight through. Might even save a door ding or two. Park a little bit further away and walk an extra 15 or 20 feet. We're all healthy in here. We can all walk an extra 15 feet. So think about that one. And that's one that I'm guilty of. And ever since I seen this program this month and I went through it, it's already stuck in my head, because I'll park further away just to make myself walk further. So it is something that, we get thinking about how close we got to park to a door, and it's really silly, unless we have someone that's handicapped or something, then that's totally different. But think about that one when you're out there. It don't matter if you're at parking spot number 5 as opposed to 20. It's just a little bit more. It ain't that much. So think about that one as well. Once you've stopped, double check your mirrors, double check the area around you, especially out in the field, setting up to do your jobs. Make sure that everything's clear. If you've got a pole trailer on and you had to pull down in the ditch like this to get ready to set that pole, or even just get off that pole, make sure the end of that thing's not sticking out in traffic. Make sure everything is in line with what you thought it would be, and the area around you is clear. Secure your vehicle, put it in park, set your parking brake, and if you're not using the truck, shut it off. Now, I ain't asking you to shut it off if you're going to be out of the truck for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes and back in it. But if you're going to be there for a while, don't leave it sit there and run. In the wintertime, walk over there a little bit before you're going to get back in it and start it up and let it warm up or whatever. But don't leave it run. It does eliminate that unknown cause for something to get into gear and take off on you. Okay. Do a walk around. Again, you guys are required to do, you all call it here a circle of safety. You're required to do that circle of safety, and it works. Proven fact. You're 0 or close to 0 this whole year, and we're at the end, close to the end of October. That blows my mind, y'all. You're doing a fantastic job because of some of the policies that your company has put in place, and it's a pat on the back to y'all. Follow what your company policy is on wheel chocks. I think Donnie told me if the truck is in use, you got to have wheel chocks down, or what is? Anytime your truck is parked, put wheel chocks down. That's what it says. Guys, it's a little bitty thing you take out the side of the truck and put down, and it's not hard. It doesn't take any time. Once you get to where you're going, put your chocks down. It is not that hard. If that's your policy, then do so. Most truck manufacturers tell you to do that. Just going to say that. If that's your policy, just do it. It's not like it's hard, guys. It's really not. This one we've been taught ever since we started driving. If you're parked by a curb, turn your wheels towards that curb, whether you're uphill, downhill, or level. It just stops that thing from rolling for any reason, even something like being bumped from the back, somebody parking behind you and bump into you. It might stop you from hitting the car ahead of you. Okay, so turn them towards the curb. If you got a trailer in tow, again, make sure that you're following all the rules on extended things behind your truck, like flags and lights and that type of stuff on the back of it. Make sure that when you park that thing, it's in the area you expect it to be. Don't take up any more room than you have to be. If you're parking in a parking lot somewhere, you know, take that into consideration. You've got that trailer behind you. If you are blocking the flow of traffic at all, if you pulled down in the roadside and you're far enough off the road, but that pole trailer still at an angle, if the end of that pole, if the flags on the end of that pole are touching that white line, then you've got to follow all the rules of putting up signs and cones and possibly having a flagger if it's necessary or whatever. So make sure that it's where it needs to be. If you have to get off of it in a parking lot and haul it in on the side of your truck, that's a win to me. It's just a better idea. Okay. So real quick, in summary, be aware of the hazards that we've talked about. One that I didn't talk about that just come to my mind, it happened at our utility, and it happened at a different one earlier this month. Those booms stick way out in front of some of your trucks. And we've had this happen. We had a hardware store really close to our facility, and he had to run in there real quick. Bucket truck had to run in there real quick and get some stainless steel washers. Okay. He pulled up in front of this building down towards the end of it, so he wasn't taking up parking spaces for other people. Down toward the end of it, pulls up, stop, boom. The boom hits the front of the building. Caved the front of that building at the top of it in. Got to look again vertically, not just where you're driving and where you're backing. You got to look vertically. Okay, so be aware of them. Take whatever steps you can take. Some of the ones we've talked about, maybe some of the ones that you guys have experienced that worked for you over the years. You know, share those. If you don't share them with me, share them with each other to avoid some of these type of things. And that's the big one. Make sure you know where you're backing. Make sure you know the area, the swing radius of your truck and anything that you're pulling. Make sure that you know that path is clear for you. Okay. And then maintain that awareness the entire time. If it means stopping multiple times and getting out and checking, that's better than backing into something. Okay. Because backing and turning and parking and all these things is a huge deal for us, guys. And it gets expensive. And as we talked about earlier, it can be deadly. You know, these little kids, man, they like your trucks. They really like your trucks. And if there's kids around, especially coming up with Halloween, man, be safe out there. Okay. But I do appreciate you guys. Just think about these things we talk about and why your policy that was put in place working. I've been giving you guys a pat on the back all month, and I've been using Middle Tennessee at every meeting I go to because of that. It blows my mind. You guys are doing a fantastic job. Please keep doing so. Okay. Any questions or comments or anything from anybody? All right, guys, I appreciate you.